Hello and welcome to Adobe Photoshop Basics. I am your instructor Dan Hood, and this is lesson 4 about files and how to use files. In this lesson we'll talk about layers and how to use layers, and we'll also be talking about blending modes in layers. So the first thing, let's talk about layers itself. Layers, as you can imagine, are, if you can imagine, they are the same idea as layers of acetates on, say, an overhead projector. If you were to take the different transparent acetates and put them over one another, together they would form an image that you can either take away or manipulate or change, and then therefore it changes the overall look of your image. So, first thing I'll show you is where to find your layers palettes. A palette is basically a little window that will pop open in Photoshop that gives you options that you can manipulate or that you can change in that for that specific tool. So anyway, let's go to the window in Photoshop and we'll go to layers, and there it is, and here is your layers palette. Now the way you change your options is under this small arrow up here. You click it and it gives you a list of different options that you can control with your layers. Say for instance you can do a new layer or a duplicate layer. Now an interesting thing that we're going to do here is that we're actually going to make a new layer, and here you can call your layer whatever you want. You can name it. What we're going to do is that we're going to import another image on top of the cowboy image, a photograph of the desert, and we're going to put that, and we're going to incorporate that in with this image of the cowboy. So anyway, to do this we'll go to File, Import, File, Place, and then we find our image of the desert, and we will place that in there. As you can see, this is an image of the desert, and let's take it and we'll move it up here like so, and by double clicking it, it'll place it right there. So as you can see, layers are just like those acetates. So I put another one on top of this, and you can see the two images. Now to put these together, or to make them work with each other, that's where your blending modes come in. Now you can apply a blending mode to just one layer at a time. So now I'm going to talk, there are lots and lots of different blending modes. There are about 25 of them, but I'm only going to talk about 6 of them because those are probably the most useful or the most used in Photoshop. The first blending mode we'll talk about is the normal blending mode, and that is what you see here. Basically what that means in normal blending mode is that actually no special effect or no blend has been added to your layer. So you'll get just the basic look with no special effects on it at all. Now the one thing that you can control at this point we'll talk about real quickly is called opacity. And opacity is just what it says. It's the opaqueness, or how opaque that certain layer is. So right now both these layers are at our 100% opacity. But let's say I were to take this layer of the desert, and here, this is where you can control your opacity over here, and let's say I was to change that to, say, 30% opacity. As you can see, it makes it 70% clear and only leaves 30% opacity, or makes it 30% opaque of 100%. So you can get some kind of interesting looks that way. So that's one way that you can use the quote-unquote blend mode, and this is still actually in normal mode. This is actually just controlling the opacity. So let's take that and let's move that, slide it. You can also do it as a slider all the way back up to 100%. So now we're going to apply some other blend modes to this. Right now we're in normal. The first one we're going to look at is multiply. And what multiply blend mode does is that basically it takes the image and it darkens it and it adds more contrast to the image. And as you can see, it makes it transparent, but in certain color combinations it changes the look of your image. So that's a pretty interesting effect that it gets there. And you can see how the different colors interact with the colors that are used in the cowboy image. So okay, that is one blend mode. And what I would suggest is that once you get more comfortable with Photoshop, go through and just play with all these blend modes. There are so many to choose from, and they all do a little something different. So it would be fun just to go through and to see what to experiment and see what they do. The next blend mode we'll go to and use is screen. Screen does almost the exact opposite of multiply in that it takes the image on top of the other image and it actually lightens it. As you can see, depending on the darks and lights of the image on top of it, it'll lighten the image itself and the image underneath it, in this case the cowboy. The next one we'll use is called overlay, and that does exactly what it says. Really, it takes the image and it overlays it, and it boosts highlights and shadows to get an interesting effect. It just so happens with the way this one turns out, it's kind of like multiply, but a little different. So like here's overlay. Let's go back to multiply for a second. Gives it a kind of a same idea, but definitely lighter because it's actually overlaying the image more than the multiply blending mode. So there once again is overlay. Okay, so the next one that we're going to look at is color, the color overlay. And that's toward the bottom here, and you click that, and as you can see, by the combination of colors here, it takes it and it changes the color of the underlying image. This has actually turned out kind of neat, almost gives it like a black and white feel. That's kind of nice. Like I said though, on different color combinations it does different things. So really what I suggest you do is once you get some photographs or some images that you want to play with, go into the blending modes and just see for yourself what they do. And that is really the best way you'll get a feel or a grasp of what they do. The last blend mode we'll go and use is called luminosity. And what that does is that it uses a specific um, category of the image and manipulates it into a certain a way. So let's go ahead and try that. And as you can see, it basically takes certain color combinations and changes them in a very interesting way. Basically what it did, it took the flesh color of the cowboy, almost reversed it out, and changed the color into more of a red. So really kind of an interesting thing is going on here. Anyway, by using these different blend modes, as you can see, you can get different special effects. And once again, I would try to advise you to go ahead and use these and test them out, experiment with them to see exactly what they do. Thanks for watching.